الله رب العالمين الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين شفيع ذنوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وحبيب قلوبنا أبي القاسم محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين وأصحابه المنتجبين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى قيام يوم الدين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. أما بعد، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. We witnessed the fall of Bashar al-Assad and his regime in the last couple of weeks. Now, it's brought mixed feelings to the Muslim community, but before going there, who is the one who has benefited from the dismantling of the Syrian government? The Syrian people are jubilant, but we will come to that in a little while. But the immediate people who have gained have been Israel, who has destroyed the military capability of Syria, who has taken more land, who no longer faces a threat from the axis of resistance. On the other hand, Turkey has gained for its own reasons. Maybe it needs or wants land, or maybe it wants to prevent the establishment of a Kurdish state. But in this, who has lost out? If you look at it very carefully, the region has lost out. When we look at the countries that we have either initiated a regime change in or invaded in the last 25 years, we will see that they have all failed miserably. The people of those countries and the people of the region have lost out, and they've lost out immensely. The countries have become destabilized politically, security has become undermined, and economically they have become ruined. It's not been in the benefit of anybody. So we know immediately that when our governments, Europeans, NATO, America, now I give myself the legitimacy to say these things. Throughout my life, I've been very critical of the Muslims, of the way they have, or we have, interpreted Islam. I have been extremely critical of the religious hierarchy and of sectarianism and their inability to have that foresight to see what is good for the Muslims and how Islam should be in the present day. I've been highly critical because I have the legitimacy of being critical as a member of the Muslim community. I have been critical of Muslim states. I am a British person, and I give myself the right to be critical of the policies of my government because I'm a part of this country. And our governments in their foreign policies are not representing us, the majority of the British people, and the majority of the Americans are not being represented by their government. Now look at this carefully. When Saddam was toppled, the Shias rejoiced. But what came after Saddam was far worse than Saddam was, to the extent that many Shias afterwards lamented the fall of Saddam. It led to the killing of 1 million plus people, displacing of many others. We then had sectarian tension and strife. When ISIS initially came to Iraq, the Sunnis of Mosul were happy and they rejoiced. Later on, they regretted it. They said these were the worst people ever that they have encountered. The Shias initially were happy that Saddam fell, and then only for them to regret afterwards due to the instability and the lack of security. Look at Libya. We encouraged a regime change and we supported factions of people fighting against the government. Look at the state of Libya. There was no poverty in Libya. They were happy people. Sometimes a tyrant is better than what replaces a tyrant. So, the Assad family were tyrannical, we know that. Hafiz Assad killed tens of thousands of Syrians. Bashar also killed. They were wrong. And I remember standing here and saying that what the Assad regime is doing is wrong and that Iran should not be helping them. Of course, not on religious grounds. They can help them on their political grounds. I remember clearly stating this 10 odd years ago or to that level. But after Assad goes, what happens to the region and the broader region? I think the Muslims are a bit naive in celebrating and being jubilant. Wherever West has been involved in regime change, what comes after the regime has been far worse than what they had at the time of the despot and at the time of the tyrant. Now, on this occasion, the people who have led what is called the revolution or the movement, at the head of it are people who are former parties of Jabhatun Nusra and Al-Qaeda and possibly and ISIS. Now we saw the brutality of this group, beheading people, chewing livers in public. We supported them back in the day, 10 odd years ago, and then we were horrified. And then we labeled them or proscribed them as terrorist groups, only for us now to assist them to overthrow Assad. So you can see that when this happens, that there are deep and deeper agendas there. It's not in the favor of the region or of the country. And least of all, it's not in the favor of the Palestinians. Now, Jolani, in his interview, I mean, of course, he has a bounty of 10 million on his head, and CNN interviews him, and BBC and Sky have also interviewed him. Now, he's saying the right things, that we will allow for minorities to coexist and practice their religion, which is a good message to give. But the thing is, how much can you trust a person like that? Especially when he has belonged to those extremist factions, the Takfiris, and West is supporting such a person. How much can you trust these people and their agendas? Now, in an interview, he said, we have no qualms with Israel. And I'm saying that's fine. But have you seen what Israel has done to the country? It's destroyed all your military capabilities. It has taken much more land than the Gazans have given up in a matter of few days within the Golan Heights. It will probably extend its settlements and never give it back. Do you not see that? And in one sort of interview, he said, he spoke against Iran and Hezbollah. We'll say, well, look, this is a very bad start. What is to come in the future? It doesn't look very positive, although the messaging that he is giving is quite encouraging. But let us wait and see. Libya, Iraq, Afghanistan have all failed. And looking at our track record, I doubt that this one will succeed. Now, on that note, what we are seeing is that a lot of our Sunni brothers are actually rejoicing, and they're calling it a blessed revolution. Now, I can understand the sentiment here. When Marhum Imam Khomeini came to power, the Shias were rejoicing. There is a naivety within the masses. The masses have pure sentiments, and they have this genuine belonging to religion. So when they see religious figures coming and deposing a tyrant, they immediately feel that this is something that God wants. This is something that is good for them. What they don't understand is that the people who are coming in place of the despots as religious people will have to look after their state as politicians. And it's got nothing to do with religion after that. When the Americans and the British, when we went into Iraq, I know the Shias had this sentiment that now we can establish a Shia state. But what happened after that is something we all saw, and it was a very failed operation. It became far worse. Similarly, the Sunnis have this sentiment that there's a Muslim group who has now overthrown a tyrant, and this is our chance at getting Islam back. And they are so desperate, like the Shias are desperate, that they will rejoice that even a head-cutting terrorist that is at the head of this organization and who is now leading Syria. This, I will say, is the naivety of the Muslims. And sectarianism has only assisted it. Now we find this, that there is a big disconnect between the people who are ruling the Muslim countries and the pure, genuine sentiment of the Muslim people. The Muslim people are good. They want to see the prevalence of Islam. But they are naive in thinking that the people who are running their states are good people. These are politicians. So in the struggle against the Zionist occupation within Palestine, Gaza, and of course their settlement in the West Bank, the Muslim states have not done anything for the Palestinians, and we know this. Erdogan was making impassioned speeches for the rights of the Palestinians, but never once did he sanction Israel or cut the oil supply. Instead, what he does is he assists the rebels to topple Assad, which further strengthens the Zionist state and weakens the Palestinian cause. And look at the naivety of the Palestinians. They were rejoicing at the fall of Assad, knowing, not understanding that this then marks the end of their own plight and their own struggles, because there'll be nobody to support them. On the other hand, the countries that did support the Palestinians were not supporting them, to the best of my knowledge, and please forgive me in my analysis, we're not supporting them based on any religious obligations. They were supporting them in the interest of their own state. It's all about geopolitics. How do you play the game? How much control you gain? How much influence you exert? And no government and no faction is free of corruption. And we have seen that again and again. And I know the words that I'm saying are very, very offensive. And I know. I do not think the Shias are on the right, and I don't think the Sunnis are on the right. And the heads of states of Sunni and Shia countries are no different from the heads of states of the Western countries. All of their hands are dripping of blood of innocent people. So when the Shias venerate their generals and commanders who have been killed, they're doing so in naivety, not knowing what is happening on the ground. In the same way, the Sunnis are venerating people that the Shias see as terrorists, as enemies of humanity. But they're doing the same thing the Shias are doing on the other side. So on the one hand, there is this naivety within the people. On the other hand, the heads of state do not care less about the Palestinians or about the Muslims generally. They are after securing their own interests. Now, when America and NATO supports the rebellion and the rebel groups, they have to bear in mind, these are the very countries who have provided political cover for Israel to commit a plausible genocide. And at the head of that regime is a person whose arrest warrant has been issued. We need to think that there is something much different going on to what we see. Now, the Muslims have eschatological literature, end times literature, and of course, our speakers around the world, the Sunnis and the Shias, are empowered by reading it. And especially the Sunnis, because I don't think the Sunnis have had a revolution. The Shias have had it in Iran and elsewhere. But maybe this is the first one amongst the Sunnis in a long time. So they are celebrating, they are hopeful that Islam will come in Syria. But if you look at the eschatological literature about Syria, it is not something that paints a very positive picture of the future that is to come. It is talking about full-scale conflicts between the Muslims themselves near Damascus. It is talking about yellow banners and black banners, and just because it says black banner doesn't mean every black banner is a good black banner. ISIS had the black banners. What they don't understand is that the eschatological literature is painting a very bleak picture of the future. I, for one, do not see things getting better. In the last 25 plus years, I have seen things progressively get worse, especially after the fall of the Twin Towers. That as well we know that the Arabs, the Al-Qaeda did not do. We know this for a fact. Now, the inquest needs to be opened once again to reassess the information and the evidences and to put it right that they did not do this. It was done by the deep state within America itself in order to give legitimacy to go and fight within the Middle East. We have September 11, which most of us don't believe that the Al-Qaeda were responsible for directly or without the assistance of others. Similarly, Saddam possessing weapons of mass destruction, it was a lie. Similarly, Libya. Similarly, Syria. Now, you know, when we hear this, that there was a plan to change regimes in 7 countries, starting from starting from Iraq and ending with Iran. It was a plan that was already set some 25 odd years ago. It was supposed to take place within 5 years, but it did not, but it's still continuing. And the person who was advising or who was put on the forefront was Netanyahu. And I believe Netanyahu and Israel is also a part of a bigger game. And I don't think even the Zionists know what's going on and how they are being played. It's unfortunate that they've become the way that they have become. Total lack of humanity. I mean, did you know that on Gaza they have built places where people can go and view with binoculars or the destruction that's happening in Gaza, and they take school tours there and children see and then they cheer. I mean, this is how far they've degraded the morality and humanity of their own children. So it's a sad story that they have come to this level. But I think even they are a part of something that they don't understand. So as far as the Muslims are concerned, they need to understand that this is not something that will be in the favor of the people of Iraq or in the favor of the region. Immediately, it's in the favor of Israel and Turkey. In the long term, it will be in the favor of God knows who, but it will certainly not be in the favor of the Muslims. So we should hold back from rejoicing and just think through things. We, the people who belong to the Shia culture, have been through this in our recent history, so we know what we are talking about. I'm going to finish this khutbah and then say a few more things in the next one. Can we recite a Surah Fatiha for all those who have died in our world, be that in Palestine, Syria, Lebanon, Muslims and non-Muslims? Al-Fatiha. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وآله الطيبين الطاهرين Amma ba'd, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I don't feel we can do much at present, and I do feel things will get worse progressively, and you can see that clearly. There may be temporary lull in fighting, but overall, the progression is from bad to worse, and I can see that. There is no confidence that we have within the policymakers in the West or in the East. They do not represent the will of their people. America and Britain, our foreign policies do not represent the will of us, the people, majority. Similarly, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, they do not represent the will of their people. The nation states are looking after themselves. The East uses religion within politics to benefit the politicians and their strategies. The West doesn't use religion, they use another language, our lifestyle, freedom, democracy, so on and so forth. But the things are going to get worse, and we can see this, and we know that. So once we acknowledge that the trajectory is towards things getting worse, then at least mentally we are not perturbed or taken by surprise. Now, in the midst of all of this, what needs to be done? What needs to be done is for people to think about the future, the distant future that will take birth. Because historically we have witnessed that every time there is a collapse within the world order, there is a rebirth of humanity. We need to work towards that future calmly, to talk about human values as far as people like us are concerned here at Al-Mahdi, to talk about Islam in the light of where it needs to take humanity as a whole, in terms of establishment of justice, peace, brotherhood. The future of the Muslim bloc should be that there are secular nation states governed through Islamic principles and human moral principles, the principle of justice, the principle of peace, the principle of brotherhood, the principle of love and care. This is what the Muslims need to create, not Islamic states, but secular states, ensuring justice and peace with Islamic principles of brotherhood and love and care. As far as thinkers are concerned across the world, they need to think about the human community globally. Of course, there will be a lot of destruction from basing it on our eschatological literature. There will be huge destruction and people will despair, but after that will be a rebirth. And I obviously do believe that a figure like Mahdi will come, because at times humanity can just not get it right. Despite our best wishes and wants to get things right, we just can't do it. We need intervention. That sort of an intervention is a human, godly intervention. And of course, I also believe that Jesus will come. I don't think humanity as humanity is able to unite itself. I think these figures will have to come. But after they come, it will be the task of humanity to create a new world. And at this point in time, we lack leadership. There's no religious leadership or political leadership that will actually take us in that direction. It needs thinkers, institutions, establishments to look far ahead and to plan for that from now. Talk about human values, spiritual belonging of humanity, the value of justice, holding leaders to account, creating a fair, just social system, not allowing banks to exploit and to manipulate, and the corporations to take advantage, to drive humanity to its destructions only to enrich themselves, so on and so forth. These are the thoughts we need to put out to awaken the majority of humanity so that we can create that future. But for now, We can only do whatever little we can do to counter the sufferings by assisting humanity as humanity. That's all we can do now physically. But for the future, we need to think, create minds, enlighten souls, so that inshallah, eventually, not us, but our grandchildren will make that future to come. And with that, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the good sense to contribute meaningfully to our human community. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep Syria safe from internal strife and sectarian strife. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bring justice to the people of Palestine, give them their human dignity and their rights, and restore their rights. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Allahumma salli wa sallim ala Muhammadin al-Mustafa wa ala Aliyin al-Murtada وعلى فاطمة الزهراء وعلى الحسن المجتبى والحسين الشهيد بكربلاء وعلى الأئمة من ولد الحسين سلام الله عليهم أجمعين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر.